As we are currently recording this episode, the Los Angeles Palisades fires are still a major concern. While firefighting teams and rescue workers are valiantly fighting the aftermath, the very real possibility of a new blaze reigniting is a terrifying concern. Because of this disaster, tens of thousands of LA residents have lost their homes, their possessions, their pets, and in some cases, their loved ones.
Rather than spotlighting one or two charities who are offering aid in this crisis, we've included in our episode notes a list of Gofundme pages for people and families affected by these fires. Also, if you go to our Instagram page, we'll be spotlighting these GoFundMe pages in our stories for the rest of this month. We encourage you to please give these pages a read and donate what you can. But these are only a small handful of people who need help. Once you've donated, please look further into anyone else who could use some help during this tragedy. Thank you, and enjoy the episode. On today's episode, this movie features Harvey Weinstein in an acting role. I don't really have a joke here, I just thought I should say that up front. We watched Burn Hollywood Burn, an Alan Smithee film, today on Nothing Movies.
Good of you to start that with a trigger warning.
Probably people should be aware of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the 90s.
Mm-hmm. A simpler time, a better time.
Was it?
Well, I mean, look around us, Kaz.
It's true. Things have only gotten worse. And on that note, happy 2025, everyone. Woo, boy, it was kicking things off with lots of hope and... Can't even get through the intro. But welcome back, however you wish to self-identify, to Nothing Movies, where we go through the careers of actors. I don't even know what we're doing. Oh, we asked what the question is, and the question is, the fuck is this? And we go through the careers of actors, and we have
a grand old time.
We have a grand old. That's what we're doing. You know what? 2025. That's the new slogan. Nothing Movies. You'll have a grand old time.
Putting a positive spin on everything.
It used to be gay old time, but the producers of the Flintstones contacted us and said we weren't allowed to use that. It was funny. They showed up in a limousine that was foot powered. Instead of a lawsuit, they gave me a slab of rock. Interrupt at any point in time.
Where did you just go just now?
No.
What is happening?
We're off the cuff. And we're off the reservation. And my name is Kaz Lesgard.
Yeah, I'm Jameson Rafter. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back. Normally, this is the podcast where we go through the career of actors and their filmographies, and we find the most anonymous and culturally untalked about movies that they've made, and decide whether or not they've got a certain something, or if they're just a whole lot of nothing. For 2025, we are kicking things off by flipping the script a little bit, and we are going to be covering our first director, the first director's filmography that we've ever covered on this show, and it seemed fitting that for a podcast where we talk about movies that don't exist, we should be talking about a director who literally does not exist. We are talking about the filmography of Alan Smithee. Now, for those of you who are not aware, Alan Smithee is not a real person. There was a period in time in the Hollywood system where if a director found that the final cut of their movie did not accurately represent their artistic vision, the producers took it away from them, it was recut in the editing room, or what have you. If they deigned to take their name off the project, it would immediately be replaced with the name Alan Smithee, a pseudonym, indeed. And there are a handful of films, around 20 to 25 official Alan Smithee movies out there.
Pretty good filmography, I gotta say.
Pretty varied filmography, and we're going to spend the next couple of episodes talking about those films. There's some theatrically released films, some television episodes and TV films, and also quite a few TV edits of famous movies that get labeled with the Alan Smithee credit, where the directors will say, the movie is my artistic vision. What you've done to it to let it play on airplanes and cable television, that's not my movie. So Alan Smithee directed that version.
Yeah, in protest, I'm taking my name off of this film, And yeah, I'm going to just give it to this poor Alan Smithee pseudonym. That's a fascinating process, to be in the driver's seat of a slow-moving car crash that you have to see to the end. And then wanting to completely disassociate from it, but the powers that be decide that hey, we invested a lot of money into this. It must be seen despite your reservations. Yeah, what a weird format to make that a reality.
I mean, I would much prefer living in that world, frankly, than the world we currently find ourselves living in. I would much rather watch a bad movie than not be able to see a movie that a studio head has deemed as a bad movie. And it's all like, well, can we make up our own mind for ourselves? No, it's going in the closet. It's
going into the burn pile. It's going into the vault.
I put it, I emailed it to myself, and then my roommate, I don't know what happened to that movie. I'm sorry.
It's never seen the light of day. Yeah.
I can tell you one thing, after watching today's movie, there's no way in hell Batgirl could be worse than the film we're talking about
God,
today.
No. Now, the idea for doing the Alan Smithee series came from me because, in my eyes, there's no better telltale sign that a movie is nigh unwatchable than a director just removing themselves from the equation and putting the Alan Smithee directed credit.
Well, that's the theory, Jameson, but who knows? We may prove that fact wrong because we've got some movies earmarked, and we're here to find out whether or not they've got a little certain something, or if they are, if the director removed their name properly, if that was the right call. And today we're talking about the Alan Smithiest movie that ever Alan Smithied, 1998's Burn Hollywood Burn, an Alan Smithee movie, a movie entirely about the concept of a director taking their name off of a movie because it is so bad. That was so bad, the director took his name off of it. So a real case of art imitating life there.
Yeah, not even as a joke, as a cute little thing to
he
put into
did
the
it
movie.
Because fuck you guys.
Yeah, we had this idea for a film about a director named Alan Smithee who wants to take his name off a project, but he can't do that because it'll just be replaced with Alan Smithee.
And boy, if you find that concept to be funny, you are in luck, because that is the film's only joke. And they keep telling it over the course of an hour and 29 minutes.
And if there's like a funny satire about the Hollywood system involved in there that you might be curious by, well, too bad, because that's not what this fucking movie is. No. This is a mockumentary in the same vein as Best in Show.
It's a mockumentary sometimes. It's a mockumentary that that sometimes forgets that it's a mockumentary.
It's like 98% mockumentary, but then there is like the odd scene that kind of takes place either in real time or prior to the events of this documentary getting made.
It's almost like a documentary that is recreating scenes that are happening, but it forgets that to do that, it needs to cast other actors in the role. It just casts the actual people that it's talking about. So it becomes like this fly on the wall expose. And then it's in certain points it just straight up becomes like a narrative movie in the middle of like a documentary scene.
In between thousands of talking head interviews.
That's practically all this is.
Yeah.
This is one of the more higher profile movies that we've ever discussed on this podcast. It is a highly decorated movie because, of course, this film won worst picture. I'm sorry. It swept the Razzies.
It swept the Razzies.
In 1998. Yes, it won 4 and it was nominated for 9. And I'll go through these here because yes, it won Worst Picture. It was nominated against the Avengers, the not the Marvel one, the Ralph Fiennes Uma Thurman one, the Roland Emmerich remake of Godzilla, Spice World.
Okay.
And rudely, Armageddon, which last I checked was a good movie.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the perfect case of making the delineation between the Razzies here, is because Armageddon is a fundamentally stupid movie. You can make a stupid movie. It doesn't necessarily have to be bad.
Of course not. Sometimes you just need a summer popcorn flick to turn your brain off to and enjoy. We should submit nominations for the Razzies, man. Like some retroactive garbage that we've watched. I can't believe not another wrestling romantic comedy or whatever the fuck that was called wasn't nominated.
Yeah, well, it's because we're the only ones who have who are aware that existed.
True.
Yeah. The Razzies, to the best of my recollection, are like the three people, or just like the same three people who have been writing it since like the 80s or whatever. It literally was something that someone started out of their kitchen or whatever, and for some reason it has become... It's still going. It's still fucking going, even though they've proved themselves to be completely irrelevant, like, well over a decade ago, since they basically started.
Watch what you say. We're going to be nominated by the Razzies for Worst Podcast.
Hey,
and we'd win.
You know what? I'd show up.
I'd
show
to accept our Razzie wins.
That'd be great.
Hey, Halle Berry can do it.
Hey, we're fucking holding you to it.
Yeah.
Mr. Raspberry.
Give us our due.
I'm sure you have a name, but I'm
Mr.
not.
Raspberry.
I'm sure I'm not even going to look it up. But the big overall winner in brackets here, the winner of 4 Golden Raspberries, is this film's producer and writer, the iconic Joe Esterhaz, who at one point in time was the most highly paid screenwriter in Hollywood history. I think he might still retroactively earn that title. He was able to get like some crazy budgets here. He wrote Basic Instinct, which in 1992 he received $3 million for doing that. He wrote Showgirls, which he got $2 million for that.
So the highest of highs and lowest of lows.
Very famously, he was paid $1.5 million for a 2-page outline. Plus $400,000 to executive produce the failed follow-up to Showgirls, Jade. Fantastic boondoggle of a sexy thriller that's also in the same vein, trying to recapture that Basic Instinct magic here. You ever seen Showgirls?
Yes.
Showgirls is fun.
It's all right.
Showgirls is as I had a great time with Showgirls.
It's schlocky fun. It's decent... But it becomes later on like a bit more of an uncomfortable watch.
Oh yeah, and it definitely there's definitely a tonal shift in it where it goes from like schlocky fun to like a serious story of sexual assault.
Yeah. And of course, I saw it on TV, so I saw the one with all the CGI.
You saw the Alan Smithee version.
Yes.
But Joe Esterhaz, like there was a period in the 90s where he could do no wrong, and he was just like living the babes and cocaine lifestyle. And then this movie really was the bullet to the head for him. He never quite recovered from this. He never quite recovered from just the reputation that he was getting on Hollywood as sort of this unrepentant asshole. You can read all about him in Peter Biskin's book, not Easy Rider Rage and Bull, the other one, the one about the Miramax thing. I don't know. We'll be talking about
there was a book written about it.
There was a book written about it,
okay.
but
you can only sustain yourself as an asshole in that industry as long as like you're as good as your last hit.
And he's the primary reason why this movie is credited to Alan Smithee. So go a little out of order here from the usual way we do here, because we're not really talking about a person's filmography here. Well, we are, but the person doesn't exist. So the director of this movie, the Alan Smithee behind this movie, is a director named Arthur Hiller, who was a pretty big deal in the 70s and the 80s. He primarily made a lot of comedies. His big hit was the 1970 film Love Story. You ever heard of this?
Just stopping you right there. Nope.
Okay, so this was like a big hit in 1970. It is like the bog standard classic tale of a guy and a girl meet. They fall in love, but the girl gets sick. And how do you think it's going to end? It's going to end in tears. It's probably best known for the famous line from the movie, love means never meaning... I fucked it up. Love means never having to say you're sorry. Which was the big tagline poster thing, which I'll just say in retrospect, terrible advice.
Yes.
Yeah,
admit when you're wrong, people. Accept so there's going to be tons of compromises in healthy relationships.
It's like I ran over her cat. Better not apologize, though, because, love
sorry, babe.
Love means never having to say you're sorry.
Yeah.
But the star of that movie is also one of the stars of this movie, Ryan O'Neal. So it's funny to think of how these guys' careers kind of like started with box office success. Love Story was nominated for Best Picture. Arthur Hiller was nominated for Best Director. Ryan O'Neal was nominated for Best Actor. And then decades later, they make Burn Hollywood Burn together.
They rode that elevator up and down together.
All the way to hell.
I get you.
But, you know, Arthur Hiller has made a handful of other fun movies. He's made comedies like The Out of Towners and The In-Laws, two movies that got remade in the 90s. He made Man of La Mancha, the Don Quixote movie with Peter O'Toole. He made The Hospital with George C. Scott. He made Carpool with Tom Arnold and David Paymer. One might think that the act of directing Burn Hollywood Burn would be the end for him. Certainly it was the end for Joe Esterhaz, but he did in fact make one final movie, which was National Lampoon's Pucked.
Oh, no.
Starring John Bon Jovi as the coach of a women's hockey team.
Future episode.
Hey, we've talked about doing rock stars on this as a theme, so yeah, that might be a possible future episode. But you know, Arthur Hiller, Oscar-nominated director, he signed on to this movie for who knows what reason.
Maybe it was different when it was pitched to him, and then studio meddling just forced him to say, like, no, this isn't the movie I want to do anymore. That's exactly what it must have happened.
It wasn't studio meddling. It was Joe Esterhaz. Joe Esterhaz is the producer of this movie, and he basically took... It's the age-old story. He took Final Cut away from... Well, I guess Arthur Hiller probably didn't even have Final Cut. By the way, Burn Hollywood Burn drinking game. Every time they say the words Final Cut in this movie, take a shot.
There's a couple of things you can make.
There's a couple of things, because there's
drink every time the soundtrack changes. You'll be on the floor in the first 10 minutes.
This is a very repetitive movie, is what we're getting to say here. But... Arthur Hiller said, like, this isn't my artistic direction, so what the fuck? Give it to Alan Smithee. It's an Alan Smithee movie anyway, so we might as well take this to its logical conclusion here.
The story of the film weirdly kind of dovetails like the real life production of this movie.
Art imitating life, like I said.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy more than anything. Yeah.
So... I wrote a couple of notes just about the history of the Alan Smithee pseudonym to begin with. So we're going to be doing this over the course of 3 episodes, so we'll get into some of the more famous ones. But I wanted to go back to the very beginning and get to the genesis of where this pseudonym came from.
Yeah, so like when did Alan Smithee first begin?
Very distinctly, before 1968, the Directors Guild of America forbade the use of pseudonyms for directors. They said this was to better support the concept of the auteur theory, that a director was the primary creative drive behind a film. It was also a way to stop unscrupulous producers from assigning names to directors whose work they didn't sign off on. It was to protect directors. It was the reason why they didn't allow pseudonyms to begin with. But all that changed in 1969. The first use of Alan Smithee on a film was for the 1969 Western Death of a Gunfighter.
Okay.
This was originally...
That's a great title
for a Western. It's a great title. Yeah. It's really fun, yeah. Originally directed by a guy named Robert Totten, who was a veteran of TV who directed many episodes of Gunsmoke. During the filming of Death of a Gunfighter, the film's lead actor, Richard Widmark, grew to dislike Totten over the year it apparently took to shoot the film, and he had him replaced with Don Siegel, director that Widmark had just finished working with. Don Siegel directed the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He would go on to direct the first Dirty Harry.
Oh, wow.
Ironically, Death of a Gunfighter is about a small town who grow to dislike Widmark's violent marshal and see to having him replaced with someone more modern. So once again, art's kind of imitating life here.
Starting to see a pattern here. Don't like the winds of change.
When the film was finished, Don Siegel estimated that roughly half the finished film footage was his and the other half was Totten's. Siegel, who had roughly worked 9 to 10 days on the film, refused to take a director's credit, and Totten did the same. So the DGA had a meeting, and they determined that the finished film didn't end up representing either director's vision. The original pseudonym proposed was Al Smith, which later morphed into Smythe, and then finally Smithee, which was deemed distinct enough from other working directors, but bland enough that it didn't stand out. You know, it's not. It's so it's not like it's like Richard Cupcake
Right,
directed
yeah.
this movie. It's like we need a name that isn't really going to ruffle
Joe
any
Blow
feathers.
or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm surprised they didn't just combine their two names or just like pick a random one, like Alan Aardvark or something. First name in the phone book.
Again, that's kind of like falling into the cupcake territory.
Right, yeah.
But using one of their so what? So it would have been Don Totten. Well, no. Don Totten's actually a pretty good name. Actually, now that it's in my lips, I'm kind of liking it.
No, but I'm sure they had to go back and forth between their lawyers. Is how about Smith? We like Smythe.
We like Smythe better. Yeah, we'll put our money down on Smythe.
Yeah.
An urban legend states that Alan Smithee was the name chosen because it's an acronym for the Alias Men. But that has since been debunked.
Okay.
That's just someone on the internet with too much time on their hands who takes apart every word and tries to find a hidden meaning.
Hang on a sec. I'm going to write the spec script for the Alias Men.
It's also pretty good.
That's also a pretty good title.
I can see a movie named that too. Yeah. The next film to get the Smithee credit actually came out before Death of a Gunfighter. It was retroactively given the Alan Smithee credit. It was another Western. It was called Fade In. It was directed by Judd Taylor and starring Burt Reynolds, who later joked the movie should have been called Fade Out.
That's why he was the best.
You see,
more like Fade Out.
That's coming in and that's going out. You understand? It's funny. It's bigger than a regular hat. The Smithee credits, it got the Smithee credit after director Judd Taylor argued that he wasn't allowed the agreed upon amount of editing days that were promised in his contract. Fade In, whose screenwriter, Matt Crowley, also paid Paramount $17,000 to remove his name from the project, was first shown on TV 5 years after it was finished filming on the CBS late movie in 1973. Interestingly, Reynolds is credited later on as somewhat changing his tune. He is quoted as saying, "It's the best thing I've ever done. It's an American version of A Man and a Woman." Which is citing the 1966 French romantic drama of the same name. So I guess he came around on it. Maybe it's, who knows?
I doubt it's the best thing he was in Cannibal Run, god damn it.
He was in what?
No, sorry.
Now that's a movie that I want to see. Burt Reynolds and Tom DeLuise racing to get the money, and it's all like, we won the Cannibal Run, and they just start eating each other.
Cannonball Run. Not Cannibal Run.
Oh, but that's what I'm going to
Excuse me, I'm hungover.
That's what I'm going to call it from now on. Director Judd Taylor would go on once again to request the Alan Smithee credit for his 1980 made-for-TV movie City in Fear, after producers filmed additional murder scenes without asking his permission.
Oh, okay.
So, it seems like for like these early accounts of Alan Smithee getting credited for stuff, it's going to be a lot of the same reasoning. Producers are being unscrupulous. They're kicking the director out of the editing room. They think they have a better...
like a better grasp of the story, of the script.
Yeah. Exactly. They're acting much like the producers within this film that we're talking about today.
And yet, like, they had a mantra of making sure that there is ownership of the film. Like, the directors take priority of this project.
I mean, that's the basic idea behind auteur theory, and that's why we have directors working like Christopher Nolan and come on, Cass, think of another
Tarantino.
name. There we go. Thank you. Yeah,
Edgar Wright. But yeah, it also just goes into like the stereotype of the movie executives and producers just being notorious backstabbers. Yeah. Which no argument.
So this movie was nominated for multiple Golden Raspberry Awards. Like I mentioned, 4 of them were won by Joe Esterhazy himself, including for his, I want to say, like 10-second cameo. He was awarded Worst New Star and Worst Supporting Actor.
It's a cameo, for Christ's sake. Like, cut the guy some slack.
They really did not like him. This really was just like the Razzies just like pointing a gun directly at Joe Esterhazy's head and just saying, we're going to ruin your career more than you yourself have ruined your own
more
career.
than you deserve, too. I mean, like, there's a reason why the writers tend to stay behind the camera, but okay, write yourself a little walk-on role, whatever. Worst actor! Stay behind the camera, you ghoul.
But the Razzies love to do this. Whenever non-actors show up in cameos, they love to catapult them to like the top of like the worst acting categories here. But just for some context here, Joe Esther has one worst supporting actor over Sean Connery for playing the villain in the Avengers, over Roger Moore's cameo in Spice World. I don't even remember that. I'm assuming it's something James Bond related.
Fuck, I don't remember him.
I had to guess.
I don't remember him in that.
He won over Joe Pesci for Lethal Weapon 4. To be fair, a very annoying performance.
Okay.
But he's kind of he's kind of annoying all throughout that franchise. He was hired to be annoying.
I'm sure there is a worse actor than Joe Pesci in that year. But
and he even won over Sylvester Stallone for himself in this movie that we're talking about, Alan Smithee film. Amazingly, Alan Smithee did not take home worst director. I keep doing that.
Yeah.
He didn't take home worst director in a weird nomination, seeing as this film wasn't nominated for any other Razzie. The winner of worst director that year was Gus Van Sant for his shot-for-shot remake of Psycho, which I get.
Okay.
I kind of get. That movie's maybe not as bad as everyone says it. It's wholly unnecessary.
Sure.
Because it is literally the same movie as the Alfred Hitchcock movie, just with like a few Norman Bates masturbating scenes added in. That's literally all he added.
And Vince Vaughn, who just like drags everything down.
Our generation's Anthony Perkins, of course. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, should we just jump right into the movie? I think maybe that's all the background we need on this.
On this one, sure. I mean, we got two other movies to talk about. The legacy of Alan Smithee.
Oh, and it's a long and storied legacy. It does stop at a certain point.
Yeah, they did retire Alan Smithee after a while.
Shortly after this movie, I think maybe this was like the apex of Alan Smithee's popularity, and after a certain point, directors still take their names off of things. It has happened, but they just don't use that pseudonym anymore. Or if they do, it's for projects that you've never heard of.
Right. And now Alan Smithee is just like now in the pop culture zeitgeist. Like, I'm sure there are thousands of characters named Alan Smithee who are like the pretentious filmmakers or whatever in, say, an episode of The Simpsons or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty low-hanging fruit.
Sure.
I would say it's one of like those it's one of those rare insider Hollywood things that I would say for the large part, most people are still kind of familiar with, like, if it's an Alan Smithee movie, it's probably a turkey.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's the Wilhelm scream all over again, right? I mean,
Sure.
started as an inside joke, and now it's just ballooned into, well, now everyone sees it and knows it and just rolls their eyes whenever they see it. So here's our quintessential Simpsons reference. Do you remember the episode of The Simpsons where there was an Alan Smithee production?
Oh, no. Remind me. Because there's so many film parodies within The Simpsons, I'm never going to remember all of them.
It was a promotional video for the nuclear power plant that Mr. Burns directed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and he took his name off of it because it wasn't. He didn't get. Even Mr. Burns doesn't get final cut.
I mean, the film ends with him walking on set and chewing out Homer and Lenny and Carl, and then it cuts to the end, an Alan Smithee production.
Well, he should have gotten Steven Spielberg's Mexican non-union counterpart.
Senor Spielbergo.
Mr. Burns, El Diablo. Anyway, now we're just quoting The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a little
Better
break.
use of our time.
Yeah, it is you know what? For the rest of this episode, we'll just talk about Simpsons jokes that we like, and it will be a better use of our time discussing Burn Hollywood Burn. No, we'll take a little break.
We've insisted on doing this.
Yes, we did. We've made this bed for ourselves, and you've made this bed by clicking download. So now you lie in it. You lie in it, and you enjoy that filth. You haven't cleaned those sheets in weeks. I'm speaking
what?
about...
Who are you talking to?
I'm just talking about my own life now.
All right.
Okay, all right. Let's just hit this. This part of the podcast is over.
All right. See you in a bit, everyone. See you.
See you in a bit.
That'll solve all our ills.
All of our ills are solved with Mediterranean street meat.
Yes.
I guess that's in the episode
that's
now.
The opening for
Welcome
this one.
back!
No context.
All right. 1998's Burn Hollywood Burn.
Boy, we really could have picked a better time to talk about this movie.
No comment. Moving on.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that's a saying that goes back to, I suppose, like the birth of of the industry. It wasn't meant to be taken
literally.
I mean, since we're on the subject, one of the stars of this movie, and weirdly credited for the score of the movie, is Public Enemy's Chuck D, who famously, before this movie came out, had a 1993 single from the album Fear of a Black Planet called Burn Hollywood Burn, that has nothing to do with actual burning. And I read the other day, Chuck D is in the news because he has asked people to stop using the song to relate to the very real tragedy that is currently ongoing in LA right now.
Yeah.
So it's more relevant than ever. We're striking while the... Nope.
Okay.
Nope. I heard what I was going to say, and I'm throwing it out the window.
Yeah, pour water onto that. Oh.
So, BHB.
Yeah.
An Alan Smithee film. Opens with Sylvester Stallone doing some bullshit.
Yo, Adrienne. You know, I never one time with her, and we still had a child. So it's a very religious movie, you know. It's the Immaculate Ejection.
This is a real.
Yes, certainly.
This is a real grab bag of actors and personalities that we've talked about.
Absolutely.
Before. This is like our fourth Eric Idle movie. It's like
it's our fifth Whoopi Goldberg movie. She's in the Hall of Fame now.
She's in the Hall of Fame now.
Our Hall of Fame. So she's an EGOT. We got our first EGOT winner.
We do. That's true. Yeah.
Truly her highest honor.
I mean, she's also literally an EGOT winner. But yes, it's our third Jackie Chan. It's the first time we've talked about Sylvester Stallone.
Third Jackie Chan.
Yeah, Fantasy Mission Force and Iron Mask.
Oh, fuck, you're right. I forgot about Iron Mask. Yeah.
And it's the first time we've talked about Stallone since our very first episode. That's kind of crazy. He hasn't come up since. And of course, it's our first Harvey Weinstein.
You know, of course, yeah.
Oh, and Coolio.
Your nemesis, Coolio.
Okay, I need to relitigate this every time you bring it up. Coolio was never my nemesis. I just brought up the fact that he cheated on Celebrity Chopped. That's not my opinion. That's an objective fact. You can go and you can watch that episode. He could have won money for his charity, but he did. They said hands up. And then he put like an olive on his fucking dish or whatever, or like a sprig of parsley, and it cost him the big jackpot. And that's the only thing I had to say.
That's what set you on your villainous path.
No, you spun it into this anti-Coolio rhetoric that I will not sign off on. And now he is dead. So it makes me look worse by comparison.
Yeah. And where were you on the night of his death?
So Burn Hollywood.
Yes.
Burn. Yes, it is, as we mentioned before, it is a mockumentary ostensibly about the production of a big Hollywood blockbuster called Trio that brings together the three biggest stars of the moment in the late 90s: Sylvester Stallone, Whoopi Goldberg, Jackie Chan, all playing heightened, egotistical versions of themselves.
Sure.
Some better than others.
I have to imagine that most of their scenes where they are being interviewed was improvised.
You got that? You got that feeling?
I got the feeling.
Was it the fact that they just say the same, like, three things over and over again?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, Whoopi told the most jokes.
I guess
so.
I guess you could call them that.
Jackie Chan's comedy chops, while undeniable in the slapstick and in martial arts, doesn't have, like, the most to say about himself.
It's kind of interesting that they picked Jackie Chan as, like, the third egotistical actor to throw in here, because this is an interesting point in time in Jackie Chan's career in North America. Like, 1998 was the same year that Rush Hour came out, which was kind of his big I'm an American movie star breakthrough. Like, before, at this point, he had done Rumble in the Bronx, he had done Mr. Nice Guy, and then, of course, all of his Hong Kong movies that, like, slowly kind of trickled their way into American theater. So it's interesting that they grabbed him. If the IMDb trivia is to be believed, it was originally supposed to be Sly, Arnold, and Bruce.
Yes,
which makes a lot of sense.
A lot more sense. Maybe this movie would have had a higher return at the box office had it been those three guys, you know, at the height of their popularity.
I mean, it makes...
But, like, I don't know. Say what you will about the Expendables series. Just seeing those guys together in an action movie, that just feels right. Bringing those guys for the first time together in a dumb comedy, It would have been a waste, and it would have soured public opinion on bringing them back for another project, I believe.
Incidentally, this very year, the Golden Raspberries, Bruce Willis won Worst Actor for 3 movies that he made.
They are aware that he has Alzheimer's, right?
Not back then. They
this. When you said this year, I thought you meant like
no, I meant
2000.
No, I meant 1990. Yeah. I meant like the very year that we're talking about. In fact, the Razzies retroactively took some Worst Actor awards away from Bruce Willis after they found out that he was suffering from Alzheimer's. That's the one rare moment where the Razzies actually apologized for doing something good shitty. So yeah, but like. You can tell that there was basically like a really fast rewrite of this, because it's like you have Whoopi Goldberg working out on exercise machines, smoking big cigars, and it's all like, oh, you're telling me this role was meant for Arnold Schwarzenegger? You don't say. Like it makes sense to see Jackie Chan in the gym beating up those like wooden dummies or whatever and like punching things and working out and everything. It makes sense to see Sly working on exercise equipment. Weirdly enough, he doesn't.
No.
He's the one of the 3 of them who isn't working out during these scenes.
He spends most of his time at Planet Hollywood fucking up a pool shot.
Kind of a funny take.
A very funny.
Kind of a very funny take.
I'm going to say of the 3 A-listers, like he's probably the most enjoyable, because if it is to believe that all these scenes are improvised and he's just ad-libbing, there's a couple where he's just looking right at the camera and he's like, look, man, I'm doing this for free.
Literally a line he says in this movie, yes.
Yo, ho, ho. You know, for a seasonal thing. No? You know, I'm doing this for free, so don't break my balls, okay?
Jackie looks like he's having fun.
Sure. Well, he always looks like he's having fun.
Jackie, basically anytime you see him in interview footage or just like the real Jackie Chan, he looks like he's having a good time. He doesn't play a great version of like the
egotistical
Hollywood
you can
tell he's kind of putting it on for this movie. But anyway, Trio, which is the big action blockbuster of the year. We get to see a 30-second trailer.
Which is like just cobbled together from footage from other action movies.
No, it's cobbled together from footage specifically from Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Oh, okay.
I recognized that immediately. Like the train blowing up in the subway. It
would have been a little too on the nose had they got Bruce Willis to play.
I suppose. Yeah. It's all like Bruce is out of the movie. We still ended up getting the footage from Die Hard with a Vengeance.
So the filming of that initial scene, that trailer scene, is finished with the director, played by Eric Idle, who's playing Alan Smithee.
That's his name. Are you laughing yet?
Yelling cut and saying like, do we want to try that again? And the producer's saying like, no, this is fantastic. This is going to the print tomorrow. And so that's our insight that Alan Smithee is a perfectionist director.
Well, and also that like no one gives him any respect, and basically he's just like he's just like a glow. He got this project because he could be controlled.
They believe,
by the producers.
Yeah. So the movie spends I want to say a solid 10 minutes interviewing the producers, the studio heads, and Alan Smithee's agents, and like a fellow film editor or whatever, just talking about like how fantastic this movie was. It was a guaranteed success. It had like money written all over it. They had sponsorships lined up. You know, that all the critics were giving it massive praise in all the test screenings. And I was just belaboring the point at that point.
Yeah, well, no, like you said, it's 10 minutes of them saying, of one character looking directly at the camera and saying everything that you just mentioned. And then we cut to another character, and they basically just repeat what the previous person has said directly to the camera.
And then it cuts to a third person repeating that. This movie, and it's like, I get it.
This movie is just like talking heads finding new ways to repeat the same 3 pieces of information over and over again.
This is why the film mantra of show, don't tell was coined. Because that's This specifically. It's a test case example.
It didn't exist before this movie came out. Yeah.
Well, maybe what's his name? Joel Esterhaus?
Yeah.
Yeah. He never heard that before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he did write Basic Instinct, and Sharon Stone does a lot of showing and not telling in that movie.
So he wanted to do a complete 180 on that, yeah.
Yeah. So Trio, the big action movie, and some text pops up to let us know that essentially what this documentary we're watching is going to be about how Alan Smithee, the director, basically stole the negatives for this film, which are in 2 film canisters, which I'll just let you know, for a big Hollywood action blockbuster, there'd be more than 2 film canisters.
Okay.
But, the props budget for this probably...
Hollywood magic.
Exactly, yes. But no, he's stolen the negative. No one knows where he is. And basically, the movie is unseeable now. He has the only cut of it because they refuse to let him do any work on this. And he's threatening to burn it all up. He's threatening to burn it. And that's basically the plot of this movie. That, spoiler alert, resolves itself in the middle and then keeps going for like 25 more minutes.
Yeah, so looking at this as a narrative, it certainly jumps around a lot. Like, we interview Alan Smithee, who has been at one point confined to a mental institution. What was it? The Keith Moon psychiatric ward.
Yeah.
I was like,
he's Eric Idle, so he's a British filmmaker. So he's like working within like the American industry. But yes, the illusion is that Alan Smithee this
has been apprehended and institutionalized.
Yes, this whole experience has caused him to lose his mind, and we learn a bit about Alan Smithee, the man. He's a little spiritual. He has his 2 precious objects, which are his Tibetan. It's from Tibet. It's his prayer rock and his walking stick, which in some scenes he says is from Tibet, in other scenes he says is from Africa.
Yeah, there was no continuity.
No, they didn't pay a continuity director.
No one wrote that down. Yeah,
no one wrote that down.
Or they filmed 2 alternate versions of it, and then they just like lost track of what was supposed to be.
That was the sticking point actually for Arthur Hiller. That was the moment it was all like, didn't we say that was from Tibet? You know what? I'm out of here. I'm walking off. But he's this classic thing that we love to make fun of in mid-90s Hollywood, like sort of like this new age spiritualist or whatever, that you think would inform more of Alan Smithee's personality, but it doesn't really, because poor Eric Idle is just playing this absolutely cuckoo bananas. Half of the time he's literally playing someone confined to a mental asylum, and the other half of the time he's just this ineffectual, but it's my movie! Oh, they've taken my movie away from me! Eric Idle also stated that he was disappointed that he was not nominated for a Razzie, which I concur. He's terrible in this movie.
I guess he's like the kind of person that that's a nice feather in my cap, have this like great comedy legacy, and also I was nominated for Worst Actor once.
Yes,
so
he's never been nominated for a Razzie for any of his movies. He wasn't nominated for Splitting Hairs. Wasn't nominated for Nuns on the Run. Could have been nominated.
Do you have an axe to grind with Eric Idle?
No, I'm not. I'm just pointing out he's been in some terrible shit. Dudley Do-Right, he's in that movie. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so ostensibly the 2 leads of this movie are Ryan O'Neal as the film's producer, James Edmonds, and the late Richard Jenny as another of the film's producers, Jerry Glover. And it's really just like these 2 suits looking into the camera and repeating the same shit over and over again. They're just like unscrupulous Hollywood types.
I mean, every character is introduced with like a title card, which gives them like their dumb stats. Yeah.
And this is all Joe Esterhaz. This is all just like hacky shit. So like
Jerry Glover, he's a moron, he's a liar, he's a wimp. James Edmonds is also a liar, a scumbag. He has a history of violence. They really lay into the fact that this guy may potentially be a serial killer.
A running joke that Joe Esterhaz loves to throw in these titles for people when he introduces is "slept in the White House."
Yeah,
he keeps bringing that up.
And every woman is a feminist.
Every woman is a feminist. Some men are feminists.
Some men are feminists,
too.
yeah.
But yeah, that's another like classic like late 90s thing. It's all like, oh, she's probably a feminist. Yeah, every woman in this is either a feminist or a slut, according to Joe Esterhaz's. Or both. Very much so. The one credited title that popped up that really kind of made me go, whoa. There's a very minor character who basically gets no context into who they are. But Alan Smithee's assistant director on this is played by a black actor. And in his list down of like various things he is, the very last thing listed is Oreo. Which I'm getting is the implication is that he's black on the outside, white on the inside, which Joe Esterhazy, you don't get to fucking make that call. That's not something you can call a person of color. That's only something they can call themselves.
Yeah.
And also, this character is barely a character, so I don't know. He doesn't act like a white person. He's not doing the stereotypical a black person like, oh, white people talk like this, oh, hello, or whatever.
Yeah.
He's just like...
He's not Carlton from Fresh
No,
Prince.
he's like a regular guy.
Yeah.
But anyway, that sort of made me raise my eyebrows. Yeah, and then, Christ, how do we even talk about this movie? Because it's just this talking heads bullshit.
Absolutely. And for the first part, it's just cameo the movie. Like, we get cameos from Billy Bob Thornton, who was optioned to be in the movie. We have cameos from Shane Black, who is like one of the writers of the movie.
Well, the joke is that they had the script, and then they brought in 3 writers to do a second draft, and they brought in 6 more writers to do a second draft. Shane Black shows up as himself. He says, I was the original writer of the project. Then they took it away from me. Then they asked me to come back to do a script polish on the script that I originally had written. Yeah. And I didn't recognize any of it.
They mentioned that there were 12 writers on the movie Trio, and I'm like, how good can a Hollywood blockbuster be when there are 12 fucking writers
Well, that's
on
the
it?
joke right there. And that we still see that happen to this very day where blockbusters get released with like 8 credited writers or whatever. But, you know, this is the moment where they bring in Shane Black. Of course, this is where Joe Esterhazy gets his Razzie Award-winning cameo as himself. I don't even remember what he says.
No.
He doesn't even say anything relevant. And they bring in Billy Bob because at this point in time, Billy Bob was also known as a screenwriter because he wrote Sling Blade. He wrote other stuff as well. He just comes in. He's wearing a Spam hat, which I thought was kind of funny.
I want to get a Billy Bob Thornton Spam hat.
But he's just a good old boy, and he's fixing a truck, and they got him for literally an hour.
Yeah. Well, I would say 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you a quick study? Can you read this quick line here? Yeah. You know, the problem with this film, just on a ground level, making it a mockumentary does the entire story a disservice. It would be much more interesting if we actually followed the events of it instead of like this. Here's the aftermath of it, and we're being interviewed over like the events that just happened. I need to see scenes where there's Alan Smithee like in the editing room just going like, no, this is no good. This is awful.
We got that happening at least once.
Oh my God. I wrote that down at the 18-minute mark. It's the first actual scene that's not a talking head. And it was like, oh, so we're actually going to see footage of this?
This is the thing. It's a mockumentary that keeps forgetting that it's supposed to be a mockumentary because it's like you say, it's the aftermath of what happened, except for when it's literally the thing that happened.
Yeah, where there's a scene that takes place like at a restaurant that happened before Alan Smithee even signed on for the movie. It breaks its own rules, and that's what makes it so frustrating. When you're doing documentaries, like, you need to film some scenes that actually look like it was cobbled together from, like, say, a news report or maybe some hidden camera stuff, like candid camera stuff. Maybe use some security footage that was actually at the location. Just make it look like this is, like this was brought together through different means to tell this story.
And honestly, nothing happens in that restaurant scene that's like significant to the story. So yeah, if it had been just like security camera footage, which totally existed in 1998,
sure,
like all that happens is that Ryan O'Neal and Eric Idle are having a business lunch, and then 2 Hollywood madams show up and they join them at the table, and one of them starts flirting with Alan Smithee, and that's all the information that we as an audience learn about that scene. There's no reason why they had to film it like a scene in an actual movie.
Yeah,
and it breaks the illusion of the movie that you're trying to make.
That's the word I was looking for. It breaks the entire structure of this movie as a mockumentary.
I mean, this movie is just like a collection of broken pieces. Like really, like they were taking this one out of the kiln and they chopped it on the ground and they just submitted all of like the shattered pieces. All like, there's probably something here.
It really needed to be more like a Bowfinger situation where like we're actually filming the filming of the movie Trio and then the interactions that Alan Smithee has with the people in the production, and then he's like on the run with the film. Like then we have like some action.
Why did this need to be a mockumentary?
There's no reason.
There's no reason why it had to have that structure. It could have just been like a narrative film.
Yeah, and you can absolutely tell narrative through a mockumentary style. Like that's what Best in Show is all about. Like that tells like a story in that setting. That's what the entire Office was built on. Fucking Comic Book the movie had an actual narrative to it, done in that mockumentary style.
This movie is Comic Book the movie with like a major studio budget, and yet somehow it's maybe a little bit worse than Comic Book the movie.
I thought so.
It's kind of crazy,
and I don't think I would ever say that about.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so some information that we learn about Alan Smithee as an artist. We learn that he is an editor.
Quite accomplished editor.
Apparently, he cut Taxi Driver, which he drops at one point in time. Which I'm sorry, no, you did not.
Yeah.
That was Thelma Schoonmaker. Yeah, we learned that he's an editor, that he's a first-time director. He's wanted to get into the industry for many years. He's wanted to move from editing into directing. There's one of these talking heads who I guess is, I think it's Smithee's agent. I didn't write down the character name because he's not that interesting.
No, but I did write down that he works for, what is he? Oh, yeah, Talentless Artists Agency.
Yeah, of course.
That's just the name of it.
Zing! Got us again, Joe! But he says, like, the movie was offered to, like, 4 of like the biggest hottest directors currently working in the industry. We didn't want to give it to like a first-time editor who had never directed a movie before. We wanted to offer it to 4 of the big names, and the names they list off are Dick Donner, Mel Gibson, Stuart Baird, and Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
And now that's
round 2 of negotiations.
That's the joke that they want to put out. 2 things that I identify. This is one of like these like haha teehee Hollywood insider jokes that are meant to be funny for people within the industry.
Oh, God, there's so many of those too. Like,
here's the 2 things I noticed about these list of names that they listed out at this point in time. They mentioned Mel Gibson twice. At this point in time, Mel Gibson had directed 2 movies. He had one for Braveheart, like a couple of years before, so I guess like he was like hot shit at this point, but still, he wasn't necessarily like Dick Donner, who was the director of Lethal Weapon and The Goonies and everything like that. So like and Superman.
Yeah.
So like that's like someone with like a storied career. The third name, which I doubt anyone would recognize, Stuart Baird, also used to be a film editor who only briefly moved into features around this time. They
had to find one example of someone who made that move.
So I guess that's meant to be, because it's like no one watching this movie would recognize the name Stuart Baird. I would, because I'm a fucking freak of nature and I remember these people's names. But no, he was an editor that moved into directing. He directed Executive Decision. He directed U.S. Marshals, the Fugitive sequel. But like nothing of any significance. So it's weird that he's like the third name that they lumped into that.
But there are a lot of little zings that they give to the Hollywood legacy of certain actors and certain directors that completely went over my head, and I imagine are going over a lot of the audience's head. Like, you have to be deeply embedded and a deeply embedded insider to get a lot of these references, I thought.
Yeah, the people who... Did you ever see... Trey Parker directed like a short film called Getting to Know Your Studio? And you can find this on YouTube. And it weirdly has a lot of the same cameos that are in this movie. Stallone is in it. Michael J. Fox is in it. But it's just something that I think he made for Paramount. And it really was just something that was meant to be shown in a boardroom. And it's Trey Parker doing like his classic like, hey, we're going over here. We're on the air trap over here. Here's Michael J. Fox. And he's doing like that voice. And it's just like a bunch of like Hollywood insider jokes. It wasn't meant to be shown to an audience of more than maybe like 50 people, mostly investors.
Yeah.
But it's like an hour shorter than this. It gets to the point faster than this movie does. And it's significantly funnier than this movie is. But it's like, this was a movie that was meant for like a wide release, even though it ultimately only got released in 19 theaters. I'll look up like the exact number later.
That is 18 too many.
But it had like a ridiculous Hollywood movie budget, and it made something like $500,000 back. So, yeah, one of the biggest Hollywood bombs of all time. But,
oh boy.
Yeah, so...
all right, going back to this here. Alan Smithee has a wife back in England who doesn't join him on the production shoot in L.A. So
they have 2 kids who are never seen.
Never seen. So, like, I guess the implication there is that, like, Alan Smithee is totally isolated without, like, any kind of support system, even though his wife seems very openly having perhaps an affair with... The implication is that, like, she is unfaithful, but we never see her
Well, we see
on
her.
dates.
We see her having a Sunday roast with a well-dressed gentleman that she refers to as her cousin Arthur. But we're led to believe one other thing. The joke with her seems to be she keeps saying like, "I didn't take to that Hollywood lifestyle. I'm just a simple country girl." But then we keep seeing her in like increasingly elaborate rich person scenarios.
Yeah,
like she has like a horse.
Yeah, she's on her riding gear and with her riding
she's
crop and
getting
everything.
into like a limo at one point. Yeah, so I guess Alan Smithee was a very successful editor at some point. He was able to I don't know, maybe his wife comes from old money, perhaps. But she's in England with her unseen children, supposedly having affairs on her own, which opens Alan Smithee up to the machinations of his unscrupulous producer, Ryan O'Neal, who's able to get, I suppose, a lady of the night?
A companion.
A
female companion.
An escort, shall you say. We're really leaning in heavily, because this was right around the time where with the Heidi Fleiss scandal
and the Hugh Grant scandal, which they dropped multiple times.
Yes.
Yeah.
You really need to know a lot about 90s film culture to get half of the references in here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that going on. I had to hit Wikipedia a couple times to remind myself who some of these people were.
So, I don't know. I think at around this stage, the idea is that the producer is going to blackmail Alan Smithee with the information that he had been with this female companion. The female companion herself, Michelle, seems to have been very... she likes Alan Smithee.
Yeah, the joke here is that
she fell for him.
Out of everyone that she's ever paid to be with, Alan treated her with the most amount of respect. She says when she's at confessional, he kissed me goodbye and says... good on you, love, or something, and it's just like we're meant to take this as sweet, but again, this is barely a character, so she's dropped for huge chunks of this movie, so...
And she's also essentially a kept woman for who?
For Robert Evans!
Evans!
Legendary film producer Robert Evans, who also plays himself in this movie in a very creepy turn. He does...
Yes.
He kind of seems more like a pimp than a producer, which if you read up on Robert Evans, might have
tracked a
little closer to his actual life. Yeah, Mr. Hollywood, producer of Chinatown and other classic Hollywood things. But just eternally tanned Robert Evans showing up in this movie.
Just made my skin crawl.
Playing a jokey version of himself, but also it's just
also
like,
very true to life.
Yeah, it's just like, well, he's just playing himself, and it's like we let people like this run the industry.
Yeah.
For so long.
Just made my skin crawl.
Yeah.
So Alan Smithee, once the film wraps, he offers to take the mastering to the machine that makes it.
There's a thing. Sylvester Stallone wants to cut one of Jackie's lines and then give the line to him. That's the reasoning that Alan Smithee says, okay, I'll recut the movie so that we take that line away from Jackie and we give it to Sly. Just trust me, I'll go into the editing room. It'll all be fine. And then, of course, he absconds with his movie with the only cut of Trio. And this is where the problem of the movie that has to be solved is the producers don't know where Alan is. He keeps calling in to like Larry King.
Who they seem to be having two different conversations when he's talking to
I think Larry King was given his lines, and then they ADR'd Eric Idle after the fact, because yes, they don't seem to be saying the same thing.
Larry King he wants to know why he took the film away.
You're gonna burn Trio? Why?
I must! OJ did it, didn't he, Larry?
You must. Why must you?
Are you daft? You know he did it.
Then what is wrong?
No, Michaelovitz is gone, that's what's wrong.
You mean you're afraid it won't be commercially successful? You're afraid of your career.
I'm at the top, you schmuck. You kiss everyone else's bum. Why aren't you kissing mine?
You're at the pinnacle of your career, and you're gonna burn your own film.
I saw you kiss Marlon Brando. Why did you kiss Marlon Brando?
This is kind of funny here where like Larry's trying to get to like the reasoning behind why he did it. It's all like, what was the reasoning? Why'd you get rid of it? Was it Whoopi? And then he said like, no, Ted Danson ruined her. Is it Jackie? No, he doesn't even speak English. Is it Sly? No, he's already out of the closet. Which I guess was a joke in the 90s. I don't remember the Stallone gay allegations, but
I have to I have a feeling that if there was a premiere for this movie and all these actors, like, they weren't privy, they're not on the set, they didn't have, like, the full version of the
no
script.
one came to the premiere for this.
Oh, I just want to see, like, Stallone just get so pissed off at the release of this movie.
Maybe they did. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find any premiere photos for this movie.
So the two producers take it upon themselves to hire a private investigator.
Oh boy.
Played by Harvey Weinstein, accompanied with some very appropriately scary music.
Yeah.
Whenever he's on
in pretty much every scene Harvey Weinstein is on screen, he is underscored by this very ominous music, and his entire performance is one of searing intensity that largely comes off from him very clearly reading all of his lines off of the cue card as fast as humanly possible.
Yes.
This was Weinstein at just like the absolute apex of his power within like the Hollywood industry. This would be the same year that he would win his long-desired Oscar for producing Shakespeare in Love. But before that, it was years of him strong-arming people within the industry for clout with any film that was released under Miramax. Like, he basically, like, bullied and shouted his way into, like, getting his movies shown at, like, film festivals and, like, got butts and seats in front of them.
Sure,
and look, by all accounts, a lot of the movies produced by Harvey Weinstein are pretty good. Some of them don't deserve the credit that they got. They certainly didn't deserve to get nominated for Best Picture over other stuff, but it very clearly was just because of Harvey Weinstein essentially bullying his way through Hollywood. And then, of course, years later, we found out that it was much more than bullying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, an amazing get a big power player like him as like a cameo role in the movie.
I suppose, but
appropriate that he's playing an intimidating figure.
But again, it's one of those jokes that kind of only makes sense to Hollywood insiders.
Yeah.
I would wager there's a big contingency of people who watch this movie that might know the name Harvey Weinstein,
But don't know what he looks like.
Yeah, but in 1998, they certainly couldn't pick him out of a line. Of course, now he's one of the most notorious criminals to exist. Yeah. Looking it up on IMDb, apparently there was a premiere for this movie. We can see Eric Idle here with his wife. We can see Ryan O'Neal looking embarrassed. I'm trying to see if there are other people who showed up. I want to see if there's anyone who showed up. Oh, Wes Craven was there. Alan Thicke with his wife.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all. That's all the people that deigned to be photographed for the premiere of this.
All right. Next, I'm just gonna rapid fire through the next 3 bullet points that I want
Sure.
to make. All right. So the producers start a negative media blitz against Alan Smithee, where he gets profiled in such titles as the New York Slimes and the Rolling Phone.
Rolling Phone. I'm sorry.
What is the joke?
I have to litigate Rolling Phone because they're doing that. Yeah, Slime Magazine,
Yeah.
Newsleak was the other one.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I get
Rolling
it.
Phone. And the thing is like we see the front page of Rolling Phone magazine, and then they zoom in on the word phone.
They crash zoom in.
They
on
underline it, and it's just like, one, that doesn't make any sense. Two,
the Rolling Phones. It should be the Rolling Phonies.
it should be the Rolling Phony. It should be Rolling Phony.
Yeah.
It's a terrible joke regardless, but you still managed to fuck it up.
Yeah. Or like,
You did something that doesn't make any sense.
or more appropriate, how about the Rolling Groans?
Yeah, exactly.
That works just as
write,
well.
We could write for this.
Absolutely.
Highest paid screenwriter in Hollywood.
All right. They want to get a psych profile on Alan Smithee, so they hire a psychiatrist who's played by another returning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stephen Tobolowsky.
Yeah, from that Beethoven movie we covered.
Not nearly enough of him.
Nope.
In any movie.
Nope.
I'll just say that.
Yep.
And the entire joke with that is that they hire a psychiatrist or a psychologist to do an assessment on Alan Smithee, and then when he comes back saying this guy is perfectly sane, they ask for a rewrite. And then Stephen Tobolowsky looks at him again and is all like, oh no, he's crazy. He's got all of like these like antisocial personality disorders and stuff.
And
so
and on the subject of just stuff that has to be Hollywood inside joke, they reveal to us that Alan Smithee frequented at the Doggy Diner. That's a big problem. What is the Doggy Diner? Because the producers are saying, had we known that he was a regular at the Doggy Diner, we never would have hired him.
And that's just more LA-based bullshit that I'm sure, like... Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't even like come up on Google. Oh no, Doggy Diner was a small fast food restaurant. So, no, San Francisco, Oakland. So I don't know what they're even talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still California, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I am assuming based on the name that it's a kitschy, old school diner or whatever. The point, Jameson, is that he doesn't eat at Spagos. He doesn't eat caviar. He can't determine which brand of caviar it is just by eating it. You know, he's a British bloke. He carries around his walking stick. He's a weirdo. He's not one of us.
Yeah.
He's not an LA boy.
I got some more bullet points here, actually, before we kind of like continue on with the story.
It's kind of all bullet points.
Pretty
but yeah,
much.
go ahead.
Robert Evans is watching old footage of himself talking about Paramount Studios, and then he kind of turns to the camera and says something intimidating. I noticed that he has 2 pairs of sunglasses in his hands.
He is holding 2 pairs of He is holding a pair of sunglasses in each hand.
Yep.
That was a choice. It's kind of funny.
They go back to interview Alan Smithee's agent at his home. While he's walking around, there is someone yelling, just like outside in his backyard. I'm like, you guys maybe don't want to do another take of that?
Alan Smithee was out there waving his stick around like a madman, and I fired him on the spot.
We've always been very selective at TAA. I mean, Stallone begged and pleaded with us.
I don't know who was yelling. It doesn't come back to anything.
Speaking of scenes where actors are holding inexplicable props in their hands for no context or no reason, there's a scene where Richard Jeni's at an NBA game and he's holding chopsticks.
Yep.
For some reason. Was he eating sushi? We'll never know because the camera doesn't pan out far enough for us to see why he's doing that. Just holding chopsticks.
Going back to, this being just a failed mockumentary, when they are doing documentaries, you kind of want to do that in like someone's office, or you want to like book a meeting room where you can actually interview people for a while. What is this walk and talk?
Cinema verite, Jameson.
It's guerrilla filmmaking. They're following these people around on their day-to-day life, like,
because it's kind of, I don't know.
I know shooting at like an actual LA Lakers game must have been fucking expensive to do.
Yeah, that's where most of the budget for this movie went. It's not the only scene at a Lakers game either.
No.
So, although I guarantee you it was all the same day.
Yeah. There's another part where they're interviewing one of the producers, and he's in his car getting roadhead from a lady in the passenger seat. And I'm thinking, like, filmmakers, documentary.
That's the joke, though, Jameson.
You maybe not want to, like, give him some privacy or tell him to stop.
He's a busy Hollywood producer.
Yeah.
He's working through the filming of like this documentary. If his girlfriend happens to be going down on him at this point, that's just what's happening. That's what life he's experiencing at that moment.
But at that exact moment, this documentary has become a pornography.
I don't know, they're not filming the cum shot or anything. It's just all we see is a lady's head bobbing up and down.
All right, it's softcore then. All right.
I think the moment where it like almost kind of works is they're interviewing the Richard Jeni character, whose wife is played by Sandra Bernhard, and I'm all like, oh, that I like her. They give her nothing to do. They don't give her a single joke.
Yeah.
But like you say, like they're filming him talking to the camera. He's doing the talking head thing, but he's actively driving and smoking a cigar at the same time, and mid-interview his wife has to grab the cigar from his mouth and say, like, you're going to kill us if you continue to do that. But it's just, there is something funny about the fact that this is ostensibly a documentary, but the cameraman has to keep following these assholes all over the place to the point where they need to get into a separate car and film them as he's driving down the LA freeway.
Yeah, there are some decent enough sight gags in this. Like at one point, what's his name? Richard Jeni? Yeah. So he's in the playground playing with like on a seesaw with his kid.
Yeah.
And he's like talking about
that was kind of funny too.
Yeah. So they're hiring Alan Smithee, and then it cuts to the other producer, and he says blah 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 blah, and then it cuts back to Richard Jeni. He says that's a lie. I resent these allegations, and he like storms off the seesaw. His kid falls all to the ground.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
There's like a clunk, and then he's all like, "Ah, sweetheart," and it's like fun. But yeah, all the talking head stuff is that too. It's like it'll cut to somebody saying something about something that one of the producers did, and then it'll cut to either Ryan O'Neal or Richard Jeni, and they will go, "I didn't do that. Why would I do that?"
And then it cuts back to like the actual interview they were having. It's like, Are you making this like a two-way conversation now? Like, what's going on?
Well, in some cases, it is a two-way conversation. In some cases, they'll be interviewing Richard Jeni at his desk. He'll say some information about Ryan O'Neal, and then from off camera, you'll hear, I didn't do that, and then it'll cut over, and it turns out Ryan O'Neal is also in the room with them. Yeah, like, there's almost jokes here.
Yeah.
There's almost setups that could potentially be amusing.
Yeah.
But they didn't find it, though.
Yeah, let's see. One of the producers goes on goes on a news program, live TV. He makes like a big plea for Alan Smithee to return the film for the sake of the arts and all the people that worked on it. And then the news anchor says, well, coming up next, another severed penis found in the Sony lot. And I'm like, you don't maybe want to lead with that story? Another severed penis?
Another very pointed mid-90s reference, everyone. Yes. I mean, and there's like meta jokes that like also don't make any sense. Like Ryan O'Neal playing this Hollywood producer is at like a function, at like a fancy function, and a reporter for National Enquirer comes up and he introduces himself as Alan Smith, and the producer is kind of like, oh, what? Oh, that name's almost similar to this other guy that I hate. But then the joke ends up being, hey, did you write that article about Ryan O'Neal? And the guy says, yeah. And then Ryan O'Neal, playing this character, punches the reporter out. Do you know anything about Ryan O'Neal, the actor,
Nope.
Jameson?
Nope.
So Ryan O'Neal, he was like famous in like the 70s primarily. He's in some really good movies like What's Up, Doc, and Kubrick's Barry Lyndon and stuff. Like, he made like some really decent movies. Very, very famous for being one of Hollywood's biggest pieces of shit.
Oh no.
Just like an absolutely like unrepentant asshole. The famous story is that he was in a movie with his actual daughter, Tatum O'Neal. It was called,
that name I'm familiar with.
it was called Paper Moon. She became, and I think she still holds the record, the youngest person to win a competitive Academy Award. She won Best Supporting Actress for that movie when she was like 9, I think, or something. Famously, the story goes, when Ryan O'Neal found out that she got nominated and he didn't, he full on yelled at her. He had like just like a screaming fight with his own daughter. He was like deeply envious of any like success that came to anyone other than him. He had like many failed relationships. No one really had anything nice to say about him. There's this incredibly fucked up story. He was in a relationship for many years with Farrah Fawcett. When Farrah Fawcett died at her funeral reception, Tatum O'Neal had been estranged from her father for many years. And when she went up to him at Farrah Fawcett's funeral, he didn't recognize her and began to hit on her.
Oh, ew.
And she had to say, Dad?
Oh no.
So yeah, Ryan O'Neal, huge piece of shit, playing a huge piece of shit.
Yeah.
So, he's kind of... It's a lot of big personalities in this movie. Ryan O'Neal, Joe Esterhaz, Harvey Weinstein. We're kind of dealing with, like, the scum of the industry making a movie filled with insider jokes that they think will be hilarious to everyone.
And
but
allow them to get, like, their comeuppance on, like, the National Enquirer.
Yeah. Sure, it's all like, look, like, we know you all hate us, but, like, look, we can kind of make fun of ourselves. We can kind of, like, take the piss.
We're in on the joke, huh?
Yeah.
We're just a couple of fun-loving guys.
Don't you know?
Yeah.
All right,
so I guess back to the plot. Alan Smithee is found out at a gas station by
a gentleman named Stagger Lee.
By Stagger Lee.
Less said about that, the better. But yeah, who is credited as an eater and a feminist.
So he is a member of, I'm just going to assume, a underground guild of black filmmakers who
That's the vibe I got.
Yeah, and he supports Alan Smithee for what he's doing because they're all about the integrity of the arts. So he ushers in Alan Smithee into under the protection of this guild.
There's a very weird but kind of a sweet scene where Alan is on the run. He has like the film canisters in the back of his truck, and he's filling up his truck at the gas station. Stagger Lee comes over and says, "Hey, you're that guy. You're the guy that stole the movies. You gonna burn them?" And he says, "Yeah, I gotta burn them." Yeah. So, and then Stagger Lee's like, "Hey, you got that stick? Because I guess he's famous enough that people know he carries around.
You got your iconic walking stick,
your iconic Tibetan walking stick, or maybe it's from Africa.
Yeah.
I don't know." He's all like, "Yeah, it's in here. Look, here you go."
I tell you what, like I keep it around with me because it offers me protection. And when he says, "Oh, can I see it?" Sure, I would have loved it if he just like cold cocked him with that, knocked him out,
and then
because there's a bounty on this guy.
And took the money or whatever.
But
yeah.
no.
And then weirdly, apropos of absolutely nothing, Alan Smithee, who has just seconds ago said like this stick means a lot to me, it brings me luck, looks at this man he just met at a gas station, and goes, "You know what? You have it."
Yeah.
And I guess Stagger Lee is so touched. I still have my rock. You take the stick. Yeah. I guess he's so touched by this that he brings him into the fold of like the underground black filmmaking movement, which seems to be led or at least spearheaded by the Brothers. And again, take a shot every time someone says the Brothers, because boy, oh boy, is that not the funniest name that you can ascribe to this, who are an underground duo of films credited under You Ain't No Brother and Word Up, Bitch, are their famous films. And of course, these two gentlemen are played by the aforementioned Chuck D and the late, great Coolio.
Okay. That's very big of you, Kaz.
Yeah, I'm a very big person.
Yeah, so, and then in another scene where, you know, it stops being a documentary and it's just a scene of the brothers and Alan Smithee actually watching the film together.
This is really where the documentary falls apart.
Yeah.
And it just kind of becomes like a bad movie at this point in time. But they sort of, like, they really relate to Smithee's plight, and they basically become, like, his number one champions, and they essentially go into like negotiations on his behalf.
Yep, to try,
even though they literally don't have any skin in this game.
Nope.
But they just like Alan Smithee so much, they're all like, "We'll go and negotiate with the producers and get you final cut."
Yeah, because we're all about the integrity of the filmmakers themselves, and I guess Word Up, Bitch was such a critical darling that they have a lot of sway and power in Hollywood. You know what
would have been nice? If maybe we got to see a little snippet of Word Up, Bitch.
Yes.
Or You Ain't No Brother.
Yeah.
Give us like a brief scene, you know?
I'd rather watch anything than this.
Now, these scenes, unfortunately, would have been written by Joe Esterhaus, so maybe we dodged that bullet, but still, it's like, the movie is just telling us that these are these underground filmmakers, but we don't actually get to see any of their craft.
No.
The joke with Richard Jeni is that he's unable to identify one black filmmaker from another.
Yeah, at the negotiation table, he mistakes like their films with the movies of Spike Lee, and that just descends into an argument.
And he drops the other black directors of note at the time, like John Singleton and Carl Franklin and everything. He keeps describing actual movies of credit to these two fictitious filmmakers.
Yeah, and it seems like the brothers are successful in getting Alan Smithee the credit.
But it's just a ruse, you see. It's backdoor Hollywood dealings or whatever, because
so they can follow them back to the hideout of
Harvey Weinstein has secretly been recording this entire meeting.
Oh, that's so unlike him.
I know. And he's basically it's like a sting operation to find out where Alan Smithee has been hiding with the film canisters, which the police are going to forcibly seize back from them. But yeah, the brothers negotiate final credit for Alan Smithee to be able to go back into the editing room and do his cut of Trio. Also, I guess they tangentially negotiate a 3-picture deal for themselves with whatever studio this is. I didn't even clock what the name of the studio is, but because it's all bullshit anyway. It's not like an actual
might have been the
so.
studio that produced this one before they went bankrupt.
Well, ironically, for a film called Burn Hollywood Burn, this was released by Hollywood Pictures. Remember them? Remember that Sphinx logo that used to come up in front of? That's something that only existed.
I remember
in the 90s.
that now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this movie might have killed Hollywood Pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the cops are on their trail, and they go back to the Brothers
Guild. Oh,
hideout. I guess it does just seem to be an apartment that they share with other black filmmakers. So yeah, I don't really. Again, the movie doesn't explain any of this.
Nope.
But Alan Smithee has gotten word that the cops are on his trail, so he's already hightailed it out the back window with the film canisters.
yeah, and he makes his way to the La Brea tar pits, where he burns the film.
A terrible location to start a fire. I should have mentioned this earlier, but inexplicably, this was a movie that my family rented when I was a kid in the 90s. It must be because Eric Idle was in it, because my mom was a big fan of the Pythons, and if there was a Monty Python adjacent movie, we usually rented it. But I do remember watching this as a kid. I remember the opening where Whoopi, Sly, and Jackie all go, "Don't fuck with me! Don't fuck with us!" Like, that stuck in my head. I remember, for some reason, I always remembered the final shot of the movie, which is Ryan O'Neal putting a gun to his temple and pulling the trigger, but there's no bullets in the gun. I just remember, what an odd way to end a movie.
Yes.
Even as a child,
That is the last shot of the movie.
I jumped ahead to the end.
Yeah.
But I didn't remember big chunks of it, and when he's pouring gasoline on the film canisters directly next to the La Brea tar pits. Yeah, it's really like a bad choice of a location to start a fire. I thought, oh God, this movie isn't going to be this prescient, isn't. Luckily, it does not. He does not literally burn Hollywood down.
No.
Not unfortunate. Fortunately. Deeply fortunately.
Right.
But he does just burn the film. The film is gone.
Yes.
Trio is gone. Trio is dead. And there's like 30 minutes left in the movie.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
Oof. Yeah. So the studio takes it upon themselves to sue Alan Smithee, but the brothers get him in touch with Hollywood super attorney Robert Shapiro.
Playing himself.
Fresh off the OJ trial.
Oh boy, and yes, and he sticks around.
Yeah.
This is one of the funnier sight gags that I will give this movie credit. Also at the LA Lakers game, there's like a scene where like Robert Shapiro is doing like his interview, his talking head to the camera and whatever.
He's signing all these autographs.
No one will leave him alone. Like, autographs are coming from like everywhere, to the point where eventually the Lakers themselves start asking for autographs. Pretty funny.
That's all right.
I will give the movie 1 point. That's kind of a funny gag.
Yeah.
It's almost like a Zucker Brothers style joke where like I didn't recognize any of the basketball players. I don't think they got any cameos, but just the fact that they were leaving the game to get Robert Shapiro's autograph, because he was, again, this was at the height of his popularity too. He was never more famous than this
from here on out, like every other scene just seems to reiterate the point that what happened to the movie Trio is the biggest thing to happen to Hollywood since the OJ trial. And I'm like, don't compare the murder of two people to a movie not getting released.
Yeah.
You fucking psychopaths.
Yeah. But like, that's just how like the industry viewed that at the time. It took like a full decade for people to really reckon with the fact that two people were murdered horrifically, Jameson. Like ostensibly you would have thought that like the public understood this during the trial, but the OJ trial was just such like this large fucking
such a circus.
It's such an absolute media circus that like it kind of took society that long to realize like
what happened? Like it was such a whirlwind of like of undertones and
And now poor OJ is dead and he'll never find out who murdered his wife and that poor man. What a shame. Moving on. Some other details that we've forgotten to mention, in addition to being underground black filmmakers, the brothers are also apparently proud Cossacks.
Yeah.
Keep going back to that.
It was a tossed off line at one point, and I was like, huh, what? And then they just keep bringing up that they are, half black and half Cossack. And I guess Alan Smithee has some Cossacian blood in him as well, so
I guess that's how they relate to each other.
Yeah, we got to stick together as Cossack Americans.
Again,
even though he's British.
There's some potential for jokes there. Like you could have Coolio and Chuck D take part in like a traditional Cossack dance, maybe? I don't know. Do something with it. Don't just have them reference this fact. It's such a weirdly specific joke to drop too and then not do anything with.
Yeah. And I suppose like the movie wraps itself up with the revelation that the legacy and the story of Alan Smithee stealing this movie and destroying it has gotten such buzz that there has to be a movie made about it.
And this is the way that the producers are going to like recoup the loss of losing Trio. Is all like Trio was actually like small potatoes. The real meal is in the life story of Alan Smithee. So now they're in like negotiations with him. I guess Robert Shapiro is involved. The brothers get tapped to direct. I guess Alan Smithee has like final
cut,
even though he's not the director.
No,
that's not how that works. You don't get well, actually, no. Come to think of it, there's probably been a case of a biopic being made where the person at the subject probably did get final cut.
Perhaps.
I'm sure if I look into it, that will probably happen.
Sure.
But
it hasn't been lately.
No, not at all.
I like how whenever they're going over the points of this biography of Alan Smithee, every time something is in his favor, it always cuts to a shot of Eric Idle with his hat on, turning it around and going, cool.
He does that a couple of times.
Which I just want to like sample, and I just want to use every time something is stupid.
You know what? It would have been funny if they had done it like 8 more times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they had like played, because jumping all the way ahead to I don't know if you like.
No, these are like the last 3 minutes of the movie.
I don't know if you cut and ran as soon as the credits hit, but like there are scenes that go deep into the credits in this movie.
Oh, yeah, there's a couple of them, but like I saw one or two, and then I was like, I'm not watching the rest of this.
A lot of them aren't even outtakes. A lot of them are just like unused takes. Like there's a take of like Stallone trying a line, and then you can hear Arthur Hiller Alan Smithee from off screen going like, I just try that again, Sly. And then like that's the end of that. I'm all like, that's not anything. You don't need to put that in the movie.
Cool.
What they should have done. Yeah, what would have made it work is if they put in like a flubbed take with Jackie Chan or a flubbed take with Sly Stallone, and then at the end of it, you put Eric Idle putting his baseball cap backwards and going, cool. Yeah, if they had done it like 8 or 9 times, then that would have been funny. But they didn't.
Yeah.
They failed with that.
One of the last shots that we have of Alan Smithee is, I guess, him getting cleared to leave the mental institution, and he's met at the door by Michelle, the lady of the evening.
He's always flanked in these scenes in the mental asylum with 2 attendants, one of whom inexplicably is played by Naomi Campbell.
Yeah.
And I thought I recognized the other guy. But
I thought I recognized him too.
I don't know where from, but
no.
Yeah, but very distractingly, the other one is played by Naomi Campbell.
Yeah.
And they're all like, "Can we be in the movie, Alan?"
You sure can. And then there's a shot of Alan Smithee smiling, and then he turns directly to the camera and yells with the Tarzan scream
and they cut
sample
in
on
the
it.
Tarzan yell, and he has his Tibetan walking stick in his hand, like he's gonna attack the filmmaker or whatever. I guess the implication there is that he's still insane and shouldn't be released, but
No, the implication there is they left the camera running and they didn't cut that out. That is something that they left in.
And Eric Idle was mugging for the camera, and guess what? That ended up in the final movie. A bunch of stuff that I bet the actors didn't think was going to end up in the final cut ended up in the final cut of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I didn't mention it before, this movie isn't even an hour and a half, and I guess they had to put something on screen.
I suppose so, yeah. They talk to the other actors and say, like, would you want to come back for the life story of the Alan Smithee project? Whoopi says, yeah, as long as I don't have to swallow. And that made me fucking spit out my drink.
I guess I know which one you prefer.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the thing with these 3 big, like, celebrity gets that they have and everything, like all of the jokes are just like so repetitive. Like there's like this early thing where like in an earlier version of the script, before we rewrote it for Jackie Chan and Whoopi Goldberg, those 2 characters were supposed to die, and Stallone's character was supposed to be like unredemptive or whatever. And then we get like a solid 5 minutes of Whoopi Goldberg and Jackie Chan both saying, I wasn't gonna die. No way am I gonna die. I'm never gonna die. I'd never die.
I can't die.
I can't die. I'm Whoopi Goldberg. I can't. And it's just like, we fucking get it. Can you improv anything? Whoopi, You're a funny lady. Surely you can. You got famous for going on stage and coming up with like these wacky characters from like your hometown or anything like that. Can't you give us a little bit of that energy?
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of the telephone. I'd even take that.
Oh, God.
That's how desperate I am at this point.
I have to feel like, all right, Jackie, we need you to just improvise a bunch of stuff. You're playing an exaggerated, egotistical version of you. You know, you might have just found out that like your character was originally supposed to die in this, and Jackie just zeroes in on that because he doesn't know what else to do with it.
Because he's maybe Jackie Chan has many talents. One of them might not be improv, and you know what? That's fine. No one should have asked him to do improv.
No, he strikes me as a guy who needs very well structured and planned out material.
Everything is planned out for him to the T. Absolutely. So which is why it's here. Okay, so that's basically the movie. Was there anything else? I mean, like, there's just like some random stuff that I wrote down in like the early scene. Sylvester Stallone threatens to go Sean Penn on your ass, which of course is a reference to domestic violence.
Oh, okay, all right.
Sean Penn famously,
like, what could that possibly mean?
Beat up Madonna. Okay. I have to assume that's what that is. Kind of a funny line from Ryan O'Neal where he's all like, I'm very healthy. I don't even eat meat. I'm all pasta. I'm like, okay. In a better movie than this, that's kind of a funny delivery. I thought it was interesting how all of the executives are driving Dodge 4x4s. That's a very nice. That's a very sponsored by it. Yeah, it's a very 90s joke. I feel like if you made this movie today, they would all be Tesla Cybertrucks.
Sure.
Oh, we gotta talk about the soundtrack.
Yeah, so
we gotta talk about this weird ass soundtrack.
Yeah, so I mentioned the drinking game of like drink every time the needle drops change. Every goddamn scene, every time there's a cut, there's a different song playing. Now, I looked into this, well, at least, so what happened there? They didn't have enough money for the soundtrack, so out of their own pockets, the producers just like made like a big widespread, not casting call, but hey, again, send us your tapes.
I just want to stipulate, not the producers, Joe Esterhazy himself, who was the primary creative force behind this movie.
So he did like a big call to arms, like, hey, if you're a musician out there in La La Land, send us your demo tapes. And apparently he was so swamped with tapes.
He received 9,200 CDs and cassettes, mostly from unknown, unsigned artists.
And he chose the best 192 of them.
To the point where every scene has a different like soundtrack going onto it, and that's why there's a lot of like public domain stuff in this. Every time it cuts to Eric Idle,
it's the Itsy Bitsy Spider.
It's Itsy Bitsy Spider, or it's Rockabye Baby. Yeah, there's a bunch of like stuff that they clearly didn't have to pay for. There was one song in particular that really caught my ear.
Oh.
And it's when one of the producers is talking, and there's a jaunty little tune that goes something like, I wanna be Michael Ovitz! I wanna be Michael Ovitz! Michael Ovitz, if you don't know, was a Hollywood studio head for a very brief time. He famously ran the Walt Disney Company for something like 16 months before basically just like leaving Hollywood behind. He's kind of like this Hollywood legend or whatnot. So I did take a peek into the soundtrack for this to see if I could find who is accredited for I Want to Be Michael Ovitz. Unsurprisingly, I Want to Be Michael Ovitz, written by Joe Esterhazy.
Oh.
And one worst
original... A man of many talents, this guy.
One worst original song at the Razzies.
Wow. Just going for the trifecta, this guy.
Yeah. The quadruple.
Yeah, the rare quadruple.
He got the rare 4 raspberries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about Burn Hollywood Burn. Kaz, does this movie have a certain something, or is it a whole lot of nothing?
This movie is one of the worst movies. That's it. Yep, that's it. I don't feel like I need to add a qualifier onto that. No, I mean, like, it has the reputation that it's interesting because, like, it has this reputation, you know, it won worst picture at the Razzies over these more well-known projects. I think within the bubble of 1998, this movie became infamous for a very brief time, but then with the advent of the internet and as time has gone on, this really has been a completely forgotten movie. Most people don't remember this for good reason. It's a forgotten movie for a good point, is that it is pointless.
Yeah.
It holds absolutely no worth towards anyone. It didn't help out anyone involved in the project.
No.
It literally ended a couple of careers.
Yeah, like rightfully disowned by everyone who was ever involved in it. It doesn't lend itself to having like a new life as a so bad it's good kind of movie because it's just not fun. It's annoying to follow by trying to track what's a mockumentary and what's, actual events of the film.
It fundamentally fails to be the type of movie that it's trying to be.
Yeah. Now, that said, I think the idea of a Hollywood send-up where a director named Alan Smithee can't take their name off a project because then he'll just still have credit for it, potentially something there if it's not shot as a after-action report of the events.
But you can never do anything with that now because this exists.
Yeah.
That concept is now
It's soured the
dead. It's now completely dead, and it salted the earth, and you can never do anything with this concept again. Not that you would want to, really.
To the point now where like Hollywood retired the Alan Smithee moniker. So yeah, the only time to ever do something like this was the time that it was made, and they absolutely fumbled it.
There have been plenty of movies that are about the business of making movies. There are some very good ones, but you need to hit just the right tone. Otherwise, it just comes off as completely masturbatory and self-congratulating, or it's full of jokes that like only people within the industry would even know what you're referencing. And
especially if they're going to be dated references at that.
Yes.
Like no, you want to make something like this somewhat evergreen. That was not their intention with this. A lot of them are a little mean-spirited, like they had an axe to grind, or they're just like taking shots at the popular target of the day. Yeah. Do not recommend.
No.
Rightfully forgotten.
Definitely not. No.
Yeah.
I will say this is the one. This doesn't even have anything to do with the movie. We had to rent this on YouTube. I just want to give props to YouTube's rewind functionality. Out of all of the streamers out there, it is the one that works the best.
Yeah.
Because like if I'm watching a movie on like Netflix or Prime or whatever, and I want to maybe like go back like a scene to like watch like a scene again or whatever, I have to like very slowly drag my finger along the thing. YouTube, you pause it and you just go tap, 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 and then it goes back. And it's just like, why can't they all be like that?
Yeah.
So like that's my thumbs up for
this
episode. YouTube's streaming capabilities.
And we're not just saying that because our podcast is also on YouTube, but YouTube, you're one of the best. Keep up the good work.
A great company that has never done anything wrong. No, treats everyone on there with respect. And anyway, we'll get off of that. Anyway, so begins our journey.
We're off to the races
into the career of Alan Smithee, and so begins the year of 2025.
I feel like a lot of the movies we're going to cover in this series are going to end up the same way. Like, yeah, the director had a point. This movie sucks.
But who knows? We might find buried gold.
Maybe,
we might find
perhaps.
buried treasure. Yeah. Don't have the highest of hopes. But anyway, we'll get into that on the next episode. Thank you for listening. This was Burn Hollywood Burn, an Alan Smithee film directed by Alan Smithee. If you enjoyed this episode, please listen to our back catalog of episodes. You can find us on YouTube or Spotify. If you go further into the back catalog, you will notice that the podcast's name has changed to The Fuck Is This? Don't worry about it. It's the exact same show. It's us. Sometimes there's a guest, but we're just having a laugh. We're just having a laugh.
Yeah.
We're just talking about films. No other podcast does that. We're
unique that way.
We are unique that way. We're two guys we're two guys talking about movies, but the hook is that we kind of joke and make fun about it.
Yeah.
We're really burning it down. We're burning down the podcast industry. We should be called a Burn Podcast. Burn! Stop me.
We should be limiting the amount of talk we're talking about, like burning the entertainment industry, given the light of
you know what?
Things
just burn.
Burn you.
It's hard to joke about this, Jameson.
Yeah.
So like we should.
So don't joke about it.
I wasn't. You're the one that brought it up.
I set you up for a mighty fall.
You can follow us on all of the social medias.
Probably not Twitter. X.
You know what? Let's make this announcement now. 2025 is the year that we are officially getting off of Twitter X.
There we go.
Where you can't follow us on that anymore. because that place has gotten real bad. But you can still follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook. Facebook, great.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong to say about that.
Yeah.
We'd like to thank Eddie Lamb for his fantastic theme music. You can follow me on Letterboxd. I'm Kaz Lesgard.
You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Uptown Slim Jim, if you want to see some of the animated shit that I've done. I forgot to find a fucking quote from an actor in this. We didn't settle on one. And Alan Smithee is a made-up person who doesn't say anything.
So we'll take you out with this. Cool.
Hey, that works.
I'm wearing a hat.
What a
Cool.
What a good way to end our show. Just like cool. Wait, I don't believe that for a second.
No, we'll do another take.